July 14th, 1518. Strasbourg, France. A woman steps into the street and begins to dance. Her name is Frau Troffea. She is a housewife. There is no music, no celebration, no reason, but she dances, and she does not stop. For 6 days straight, she dances in the narrow medieval streets. Her feet bleed. Her body weakens. People beg her to stop. Her husband pleads with her. She cannot. By the end of the first week, 34 others have joined her. By the end of the month, approximately 400 people are dancing, day and night, without rest, without choice. Some dance until their hearts give out, some until they collapse from strokes, some until sheer exhaustion kills them. This is not legend. This is not folklore. This is documented history. City council records still exist. Physicians' notes survive. Eyewitness testimonies were recorded by multiple sources. In the summer of 1518, in one of Europe's largest cities, hundreds of people danced themselves to exhaustion, madness, and in some cases, death. Medical professionals were consulted. Religious leaders performed exorcisms. The authorities tried everything they could think of. Nothing worked. And to this day, more than 500 years later, we still do not know why it happened. Strasbourg in 1518 was not some isolated village prone to superstition. It was a prosperous city of approximately 20,000 people, a center of commerce and learning, a place with physicians, scholars, and a sophisticated city government, which makes what happened there even more difficult to explain. The dancing plague, as it came to be known, is one of the most well-documented medical mysteries in history. And yet, despite centuries of investigation, despite modern psychiatric and medical analysis, despite everything we've learned about the human body and mind, we still cannot definitively explain what caused 400 people to dance uncontrollably for weeks. What we do know is this: it happened. The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple independent sources documented it. The city council held emergency meetings. Physicians were brought in from across the region. The church performed special ceremonies. This was not mass hysteria dismissed by authorities. This was a medical crisis that terrified one of Europe's most important cities. If historical mysteries that defy explanation fascinate you, if you want to explore the events that historians can document but cannot fully understand, you are in the right place. This channel investigates the real events that remain unexplained, the moments when history refuses to make sense. Because sometimes, the most disturbing stories are not the invented ones. They are the ones that actually happened. Let me take you back to that July morning in 1518. Frau Troffea lived in a modest home near the city center. She was married. She lived an ordinary life. There is no record of her being ill, mentally unstable, or particularly unusual in any way. But on July 14th, something changed. Contemporary accounts describe her stepping into the street and beginning to dance. The movements were described as frantic, compulsive, not the structured dances of festivals or celebrations. Witnesses said she seemed unable to control herself, that she appeared distressed. Even as she continued moving, hour after hour, she danced. As evening fell, concerned neighbors tried to help her. They attempted to restrain her. She broke free and continued. Her husband pleaded with her to come inside. She either could not hear him or could not respond. Night came. She danced through the darkness. When the sun rose on July 15th, Frau Troffea was still dancing. Now people were truly alarmed. This was not normal behavior. This was not explainable. Day 2 became day 3. Her feet bled through her shoes. She showed signs of exhaustion but could not or would not stop. By day 4, she was attracting crowds. People came from across the city to witness this bizarre spectacle. Some thought she was possessed by demons. Others thought she had been cursed. Physicians examined her, but found no obvious physical ailment. On day 6, the impossible became epidemic. 34 other people, scattered across the city, began dancing. Different streets, different neighborhoods, different social classes, but all exhibiting the same compulsive, uncontrollable dancing. The city council convened emergency meetings. Records from these meetings still exist. We can read the exact words of city officials grappling with something they had never encountered before. They documented names. They documented numbers. They tried to understand. By late July, the number had grown to approximately 70 people. By mid-August, contemporary sources suggest the number reached as high as 400. 400 people dancing in the streets of Strasbourg, unable or unwilling to stop, many of them clearly in distress. Physicians of the time were consulted. The city's medical establishment took this seriously. They examined the dancers. They took notes. They proposed theories based on the medical understanding of 1518. Their diagnosis? Hot blood. According to medieval medical theory, dancing was caused by an imbalance in the bodily humors. The dancers had blood that was too hot, too stimulated. The cure, they believed, was to let them dance it out, to allow the excess heat to be expelled through movement. So the city authorities made a decision that, in retrospect, seems incomprehensible. They decided to encourage more dancing. Stages were built in public squares. Professional musicians were hired. Professional dancers were brought in to dance alongside the afflicted, theorizing that organized, controlled dancing would help. It had the opposite effect. The music and the stages seemed to spread the affliction further. More people joined the dancing. The death toll began to rise. Historical records mention deaths from heart attacks, strokes, and exhaustion. The exact number is debated, but most historians agree that at least 15 people died directly from the dancing, with some estimates suggesting the number was higher. By late August, the authorities realized their mistake. The stages were dismantled, the musicians were sent away, and the city turned to the only other authority they trusted, the church. The prevailing theory shifted from medical to supernatural. This was not hot blood. This was a curse from Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus was a Catholic saint associated with dancing and neurological disorders. In medieval belief, he had the power to inflict involuntary movements as divine punishment. The afflicted dancers were taken on a pilgrimage to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus in a nearby town called Saverne. There, priests performed special ceremonies. The dancers were made to pray, to confess their sins, to wear red shoes blessed by the church, to hold small crosses carved from wood. And slowly, gradually, the dancing stopped. By early September 1518, the plague had ended. Those who survived returned to their normal lives. The city began to recover. But the question remained, what had actually happened? If this historical mystery has captured your attention, if you want to see more documented events that resist explanation, leave a like. It helps this channel reach people who want to understand history's strangest moments. For 500 years, scholars have tried to explain the dancing plague of 1518. The theories range from medical to psychological to environmental. Let me walk you through them. Theory 1. Ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on rye grain. When consumed, it can cause convulsions, hallucinations, and spasms. It is a leading scientific explanation for the dancing plague, proposed by multiple researchers in the 20th century. Ergot poisoning, also called ergotism or St. Anthony's fire, was a known problem in medieval Europe. It could affect entire communities who ate bread made from contaminated grain. The theory seems plausible. Strasbourg in 1518 had experienced several poor harvests. Desperate people might have consumed grain that should have been discarded. But there are problems with this explanation. First, ergot typically causes violent convulsions, not coordinated dancing. Victims of ergotism cannot control their limbs, but they do not move in the organized patterns that witnesses described. Second, ergot poisoning causes gangrene and tissue death in extremities. Fingers and toes turn black and fall off. None of the contemporary accounts mention this. Third, ergot affects everyone who consumes the contaminated grain. But the dancing plague was selective. Most of Strasbourg did not dance. Only specific individuals were affected. And it spread over time, not all at once as you would expect from food contamination. Fourth, and perhaps most damning, the dancers were lucid. They understood what was happening to them. They showed distress. Ergot poisoning causes profound hallucinations and delirium. The dancers did not exhibit this. So ergot poisoning, while possible, does not fully explain what happened. Theory 2. Mass psychogenic illness. This is a prevailing theory among modern historians and psychiatrists. Mass psychogenic illness, also known as mass hysteria, occurs when psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms across a group of people who share the same beliefs and fears. The context supports this theory. Strasbourg in 1518 was suffering. The previous decades had been brutal. Famine, disease, syphilis epidemics, harsh winters. The region had experienced significant trauma. The people of Strasbourg were devout Catholics living in a time when divine punishment was considered real and immediate. They believed in curses. They believed in possession. They believed that saints could inflict suffering. In this environment, one person's breakdown could trigger others. Frau Troffea's dancing was witnessed by hundreds. In a traumatized community, watching someone dance uncontrollably could activate similar responses in susceptible individuals. The psychological mechanism is understood. When people are under extreme stress, when they believe certain symptoms are possible, those symptoms can manifest physically. The mind affects the body in ways we are only beginning to understand. Mass psychogenic illness has been documented throughout history. In 1962, a laughing epidemic in Tanganyika affected thousands of people who could not stop laughing for weeks. In the 20th century, there were multiple cases of fainting epidemics in schools and factories. But can stress and belief really cause people to dance for weeks? Can the mind override the body's need for rest to such an extreme degree? Modern medicine says yes, it is possible. The mind's power over the body is profound. But this explanation, while logical, still leaves questions. Why dancing specifically? Why did it start with Frau Troffea? Why did it stop when it did? Theory 3. Religious mania. Some historians propose that the dancing plague was a form of religious expression that spiraled out of control. In medieval Europe, there was a tradition of dancing pilgrimages. Groups would dance to shrines as a form of penance or devotion. These were called dancing processions or chormania. Perhaps what started as a religious expression became pathological. Perhaps Frau Troffea was attempting a form of spiritual practice that others misinterpreted and imitated. But this does not explain the involuntary nature of the dancing. Witnesses consistently describe the dancers as unable to stop, not unwilling. They were suffering, not worshiping. Theory 4. Deliberate poisoning. A few researchers have suggested that someone poisoned the community's food or water supply with a psychoactive substance. Perhaps an enemy of the city. Perhaps someone conducting an experiment. But there is no evidence for this. And it does not explain the pattern of spread over weeks. Poisoning would affect people simultaneously, not gradually. Theory 5. Neurological disease. Could the dancers have been suffering from an infectious disease that affected the nervous system? Something like encephalitis or a similar brain infection that causes involuntary movements. Possible but unlikely. Such diseases typically cause other symptoms. Fever, confusion, rapid progression. The dancers showed none of this. So 500 years later, we have theories but no definitive answer. What we do know is that something happened in Strasbourg in 1518 that caused hundreds of people to dance uncontrollably. Something that medical professionals could not treat. Something that religious intervention appeared to end. Something that has never been fully explained. If you are fascinated by historical events that resist simple explanations, if you want to explore more mysteries that history has preserved but not solved, subscribe. This channel is dedicated to the moments when the past refuses to make sense. But the dancing plague was not unique. This is where the story becomes even stranger. The 1518 outbreak in Strasbourg was not the first dancing epidemic, and it was not the last. Historical records document similar events across Europe for over 200 years. In 1374, an outbreak occurred in Aachen, Germany. Hundreds of people danced through the streets. The epidemic spread to other cities. Cologne, Metz, Utrecht, Liege. In 1418, exactly 100 years before Strasbourg, another dancing plague struck in the same region. In 1563, another outbreak occurred. The pattern suggests this was not random, not isolated incidents, but recurring phenomenon across multiple centuries and multiple locations. What connects these outbreaks? Historians have noticed several commonalities. The dancing plagues occurred during periods of extreme hardship, famine, disease, religious upheaval, economic collapse. They occurred in regions with strong Catholic traditions and belief in Saint Vitus. They occurred among the lower classes more often than the wealthy, and they occurred primarily in Germanic-speaking regions of Europe. This last point is important. Saint Vitus was particularly venerated in Germanic Catholicism. There was a cultural belief that he could cause involuntary dancing as punishment, or that dancing could cure certain afflictions. Modern psychiatrists call this culture-bound syndrome, a condition that exists because a culture believes it exists. The belief itself creates the possibility. In cultures that believe in Wendigo transformation, people exhibit Wendigo psychosis. In cultures that believe in demonic possession, people exhibit possession symptoms. In cultures that believe St. Vitus can make you dance, people dance. The belief shapes the manifestation. But does this explain the dancing plague? Does cultural belief fully account for people dancing themselves to death? John Waller, a historian at Michigan State University, published a book in 2008 called A Time to Dance, A Time to Die, examining the 1518 outbreak. He argues convincingly for mass psychogenic illness triggered by extreme stress and shaped by cultural beliefs about St. Vitus. His research is thorough. His arguments are compelling. If you want to understand this event in depth, his book is a definitive source. I have linked to it in the description. But even Waller acknowledges that we cannot be completely certain. The evidence is 500 years old. We cannot interview the dancers. We cannot run medical tests. We can only interpret the historical record. And the historical record, while extensive, was written by people who believed in curses and divine punishment. Their observations were filtered through medieval understanding of medicine and spirituality. So we are left with an event that is well documented but incompletely understood. 400 people danced in the streets of Strasbourg for weeks. Some died. This is fact. Why it happened remains, in the end, a mystery. The dancing plague of 1518 should not exist in history books. It is too strange, too improbable, too resistant to rational explanation. And yet it happened. The city council records are real. The physician's notes are real. The testimonies are real. Multiple independent sources documented the same bizarre event. This is what makes it so fascinating and so unsettling. We like to think that with enough research, enough science, enough time, we can explain anything. That every mystery has a solution. That history eventually reveals its secrets. But the dancing plague suggests otherwise. It suggests that some events, even well-documented ones, resist explanation. That human behavior can be so complex, so influenced by factors we do not fully understand, that certainty remains impossible. Perhaps it was ergot. Perhaps it was mass psychogenic illness. Perhaps it was something we have not yet considered because our medical understanding is still incomplete. What we can say for certain is that the people of Strasbourg in 1518 experienced something real, something that terrified them, something that killed some of them, something their society's best minds could not stop or understand. And we, 500 years later, with all our advanced medicine and psychology, still struggle to fully explain it. That should humble us. It should remind us that knowledge has limits, that human experience encompasses things that cannot always be neatly categorized. The dancers of 1518 are gone. Their suffering ended 5 centuries ago, but their story remains, documented, preserved, unexplained, a reminder that history is not always a solved puzzle. Sometimes it is a question that refuses to be answered. If this story has made you see history differently, if it has shown you that the past still holds mysteries that even modern science cannot fully solve, share this video. These documented mysteries deserve to be remembered, even if we cannot explain them. The dancing plague of 1518 happened. We know that much. Everything else is still, after 500 years, speculation. And maybe that is how it should be. Maybe some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries, to remind us that not everything in human experience can be reduced to clear explanations. The dancers danced. Some died. The rest eventually stopped. And we still do not know why.